Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of power in the modern world, especially in a society where people believe that speaking louder equates to dominance, and reacting quickly equates to strength, but the truth is far more profound and far more uncomfortable. Silence is a mirror that exposes the inner instability of every ego it reflects. It dismantles illusions quietly, forces introspection naturally, and weakens pride without a single confrontation. When you understand Stoicism deeply, you begin to see silence not as avoidance, not as weakness, but as a disciplined decision to withdraw your energy from battles that do not deserve your presence. Human beings thrive on validation, attention, acknowledgement, and emotional responses. The ego, fragile, insecure, and easily threatened, feeds on reactions the same way a fire feeds on oxygen. And when you choose not to give that reaction, when you choose to be still, calm, emotionally untouchable, the ego begins to suffocate. The person on the receiving end of your silence feels the shift immediately. They feel the loss of control. They feel the collapse of their influence. They feel the weight of their own behavior finally catching up with them. And the most ironic part is this: the quieter you become, the louder their ego screams internally. This is why silence is so powerful, because it leaves the other person alone with their unresolved insecurities, unhealed wounds, manipulative habits, and emotional expectations. It forces them to confront themselves without you doing anything. That is the true essence of Stoic mastery. Controlling yourself so deeply that you end up influencing the world without trying to influence it at all. Today, we're going to break down the 7 unmistakable signs that your silence is breaking someone's ego, and they can feel every bit of it, even when they pretend otherwise. These signs are subtle, psychological, and deeply human. They reveal how people behave when their pride is threatened by someone who refuses to be emotionally controlled. Before we begin, if you want more videos that strengthen your mind, sharpen your character, and elevate your self-discipline through the ancient wisdom of Stoicism, make sure you subscribe to my channel right now. It helps you stay consistent on your journey of self-mastery, and it helps the channel grow so more people can rise with you. Now let's begin. 1. They start seeking your attention more aggressively than before. When your silence begins to chip away at someone's ego, the first thing you'll notice is a radical shift in the way they try to access your attention. This shift is rarely loud, rarely dramatic at first. It begins subtly, gradually, almost instinctively. They may start by reaching out through small messages, comments, or unnecessary interactions disguised as casual curiosity. They may bring up random topics, pretend they need help with something, or attempt to insert themselves into your space in ways they never cared to before. And the reason is simple: your silence creates a vacuum they cannot tolerate. The ego is addicted to attention the same way a weak mind is addicted to distraction. When you suddenly stop responding, stop feeding their emotional expectations, stop giving them reactions, their internal balance collapses. They feel as though they've lost access to something they believed they owned: your energy, your emotions, your responses. Ego-driven people survive on the belief that they can influence the world around them. Your silence proves them wrong, and it shakes them internally more than any argument could. What makes this sign so fascinating is how often they try to disguise their attempts. They may pretend they're reaching out for something innocent, but their tone exposes the truth. They may show up unexpectedly, linger around you, like or watch your social media activity, subtly stalk your online presence, or try to spark conversations indirectly through others. In extreme cases, they may even create fake scenarios, fake emergencies, or exaggerated emotional displays, all designed to pull you back into interacting with them. The ego is most desperate just before it breaks. Stoicism teaches that attention is energy, and when you withhold your energy, you reclaim your power. This is why your silence feels like a threat to them, because it proves you do not rely on them emotionally, but they rely on you more than they want to admit. And nothing bruises an ego more deeply than the realization that the person they tried to control is no longer available to be controlled. 2. They become emotionally reactive, defensive, or irritated without any clear reason. When your silence begins to break someone's ego, their emotional behavior enters a state of imbalance. This is where their reactions start revealing what their pride refuses to express out loud. Instead of being calm, rational, or indifferent, they begin displaying unusual levels of defensiveness or irritation, not because you attacked them, not because you did anything wrong, but because your silence forced them into a confrontation with themselves. And nothing triggers the ego more than internal confrontation. Silence feels like judgment to the ego, it feels like punishment. It feels like exposure. Every moment you remain quiet, every moment you refuse to respond, every moment you deny them the emotional reaction they crave, their ego interprets it as an attack, even if you're doing absolutely nothing. This is why they may accuse you of being strange, arrogant, disrespectful, or acting like you're better. They create narratives to protect their fragile pride from acknowledging the real reason. They no longer control your emotional world. Your silence forces them to deal with their unresolved insecurities, and the moment these insecurities rise to the surface, they lash out. They may become overly emotional. They may start unnecessary arguments. They may say things that are exaggerated, dramatic, or irrational. This is because silence pierces deeper than words. It exposes everything they've been hiding from themselves. Stoics understand that emotional reactivity is the clearest sign of internal instability. In some cases, they try to provoke you just to get you to break your silence. They may do small things to irritate you. They may bring up past conflicts, create emotional tension, or act like they don't care when they clearly do. Their mood shifts unpredictably because they are fighting a battle between their wounded pride and the desperate need to feel like they still matter to you. The more silent you are, the more unstable their reactions become. Defensiveness is not a sign of strength, it is a sign of insecurity. Irritation is not a sign of confidence, it is a symptom of emotional dependence. And emotional reactivity is not accidental. It's evidence that your silence has reached the parts of them that their ego tries to protect. Stoicism teaches that true power is demonstrated when you can stay calm in the middle of someone else's emotional chaos. Your silence exposes their inner storms, and the louder they become, the clearer it is that your silence is dismantling them far more than any argument ever could. 3. They try to provoke you intentionally because your silence makes them feel powerless. There comes a moment in every ego battle when the other person realizes something they never wanted to acknowledge. They have lost control over your emotions. This realization is painful for them, not physically, but psychologically, deeply, personally. And once they feel that loss, they desperately try to regain it by provoking you. This is one of the strongest signs that your silence is crushing their ego, because provocation is the ego's final attempt to re-establish dominance. People with fragile pride hate silence because silence leaves them powerless. It removes the fuel they rely on, your reactions. They cannot manipulate you, cannot influence you, cannot emotionally steer you if you're not responding. This is why they start trying to push your buttons in ways they never did before. They begin doing small things intentionally to get your attention, irritate you, or upset you. These actions may appear casual or accidental, but they are calculated attempts to make you break your silence. They may bring up painful memories or bring up moments where they think they can make you emotional. They might use sarcasm, disrespect, or subtle insults disguised as jokes. They might talk loudly about you to others, hoping you overhear. They may post things online indirectly aimed at you. They might reach out at odd times, acting reckless or dramatic, all in an attempt to get even a drop of reaction from you. To them, any reaction, even negative, is a sign that they still have influence. But your silence takes away that illusion. Stoicism teaches that emotional control is the highest form of strength. When you refuse to be provoked, when you stand firm in silence, when you refuse to play their psychological games, you expose the fact that their attempts are not working. Their ego starts cracking under the pressure of their own helplessness. This is when they realize that they cannot move you emotionally, and this realization is unbearable to someone who thrives on emotional dominance. Your silence is not passive. It is the loudest message you could ever deliver. It says, "I no longer give you power over my peace." And when they see that their provocations fail, over and over again, their ego begins to break. They're not used to losing control over people. They're not used to someone who is not affected by their words. They're not used to someone who doesn't respond to their emotional traps. The more they try and fail to provoke you, the more your silence becomes a mirror exposing their emotional weakness. And nothing humiliates the ego more than realizing its tactics no longer work. 4. They pretend not to care, yet their entire behavior starts revolving around you. When your silence reaches the deeper layers of a person's ego, something very contradictory begins to happen. Outwardly, they start acting like they don't care, as if your silence means nothing, as if your absence has no effect, as if your emotional withdrawal is irrelevant. But beneath this performance, their behavior begins to shift in ways that expose the truth. They care far more than they want anyone to know, especially themselves. This contradiction is one of the clearest signs that your silence is disrupting their pride. People with inflated egos hate looking vulnerable. They hate the idea of someone having emotional power over them. They hate the idea that your silence could affect them. So instead of admitting how deeply they feel your withdrawal, they begin constructing a facade of indifference. This facade becomes their emotional armor. But like all weak armor, it cracks under pressure. They start saying things like, "I'm fine, I don't care, it doesn't bother me," or "do whatever you want," while their actions reveal something completely different. They begin watching you more quietly than before. They monitor your social media, your updates, your stories, your presence. They look for clues that you still think about them. They may ask mutual friends about you, pretending it's casual, even though their tone carries tension. They may start posting things indirectly aimed at you, inspirational quotes, bold status updates, staged photos, passive-aggressive messages, or exaggerated displays of happiness designed to make you wonder. This isn't genuine confidence. It's ego camouflage. Your silence pushes them into a state of psychological conflict. On one hand, they want to protect their pride by pretending they are unbothered. On the other hand, your stillness makes them anxious, curious, irritated, and restless. They want answers they can't get because you're not giving them any. This uncertainty eats at them, and uncertainty is the ego's greatest enemy. The stronger your silence, the more dramatic their behavior changes. In some cases, they may start mirroring your silence as a way to regain control. They think, if I act like I don't care either, I will win. But this is not Stoic silence, it's defensive silence. It's an attempt to prove something to themselves. Instead of being calm, grounded, and self-contained, their silence is filled with tension, resentment, and insecurity. They are not silent because they're at peace. They are silent because your silence forced them into a psychological corner. They may also overcompensate with exaggerated confidence. They might suddenly become overly friendly with others, overly active online, overly expressive, overly busy, or overly social, not because they're genuinely thriving, but because they want to be seen as unaffected. The ego creates illusions to protect itself from reality. Your silence threatens those illusions, so they respond with performances. Stoicism teaches that genuine strength is quiet, and genuine peace does not need to be advertised. When someone pretends not to care, yet their behavior becomes unusual, inconsistent, or performative, it reveals the internal battle your silence awakened in them. Their ego is trying to adapt, resist, deny, or defend itself, but every change in their behavior exposes the truth. Your silence reached them. Your silence affected them. Your silence is breaking them more than any words ever could. 5. They begin competing with you in obvious or subtle ways because your silence threatens their sense of superiority. When your silence begins to dismantle someone's ego, they often respond with one of the most revealing behaviors of all: competition. This competition does not emerge from genuine ambition or self-improvement. It emerges from insecurity. It is triggered by the sinking realization that they are losing psychological power over you. Your silence makes them feel small, insignificant, and suddenly less important in the emotional landscape they once felt they controlled. And rather than confront this uncomfortable truth, the ego tries to compensate by proving superiority. This competition may appear subtle at first. They may suddenly start talking more about their successes, accomplishments, or progress. They may post achievements online that they never shared before. They exaggerate their happiness, boost their confidence theatrically, or place themselves in situations where they appear admired or desired. This is not growth. It is ego inflation. They want you to see them as someone who is doing better without you, even though they're actually reacting to your silence the entire time. In some cases, competition becomes more direct. They begin comparing themselves to you, even if only in their mind. They begin asking mutual friends about what you're doing, what you're achieving, who you're talking to, not because they care, but because the thought of you being unaffected tears at their pride. They may imitate your behavior, adopt your habits, or mirror your emotional style in an attempt to reclaim power. They may even try to surround themselves with new people or new attention as a way to prove that your silence doesn't matter. But nothing exposes insecurity more clearly than unnecessary competition. The ego hates equilibrium. It hates feeling equal to others. It needs to feel above, admired, respected, valued, desired. Your silence disrupts that illusion by showing them that they have no special authority over your emotions. That alone pushes them into a competitive mindset. They begin trying to outshine you, outdo you, outperform you, not because they are driven by passion, but because they are driven by wounded pride. Stoicism teaches that the wise focus inward, while the insecure compare themselves outwardly. When someone starts competing with you after you go silent, it is because your peace exposed their internal instability. They cannot understand how you remain calm, confident, and grounded without reacting. They cannot understand why you seem unaffected while they are struggling with discomfort. Their competition becomes a way of asking themselves a painful question. Why does this person have strength that I don't? And the more you remain unmoved, the more uncomfortable the answer becomes. They try to reclaim superiority in every way they can, through appearance, social life, career, relationships, money, or status. But the more they compete, the more obvious it becomes that they are fighting a war inside themselves. They are not trying to win against you. They are trying to win against the insecurity your silence revealed in them. Your silence made them see themselves through a lens they had been avoiding. They feel threatened by your emotional discipline, and rather than accept it, they try to overshadow it. But no amount of competition can change the truth. The fact that they are competing at all proves that your silence already won. 6. They start rewriting the story to make themselves look innocent and you look like the problem. When your silence penetrates deeply enough to disrupt someone's ego, they enter one of the most revealing psychological stages: narrative reconstruction. This is when they begin rewriting the story in their mind, and sometimes publicly, to protect their pride from the truth your silence forces them to confront. They cannot accept the reality that their actions pushed you into silence. They cannot accept the emotional mirror your quiet creates. So they start altering the narrative to make themselves feel justified, innocent, or superior. This rewriting is not done consciously. It is an instinctive self-defense mechanism. When their ego feels threatened, it tries to preserve itself by shaping a version of events where they are right, they are misunderstood, and you are the unreasonable one. They need this illusion because facing the truth, that your silence is a reaction to their behavior, would require accountability, emotional maturity, and self-awareness. And a fragile ego does not have the capacity for that level of honesty. They may begin telling others subtle, misleading stories about what happened. They might paint you as withdrawn, dramatic, overly sensitive, distant, or difficult. They may describe your silence as immaturity instead of self-respect. They may frame the situation as if they are the one choosing distance, even though internally they know it was your silence that initiated the shift. This is the ego desperately trying to avoid humiliation. Sometimes the rewriting happens privately. They replay events in their mind and twist details to avoid acknowledging their mistakes. They convince themselves that they are the victim. They justify their behavior with distorted logic. They reinterpret your silence as an overreaction, even though it is a consequence of their own actions. This internal storytelling helps them cope with the emotional discomfort your silence created. What makes this sign so powerful is that it exposes something profound. Your silence forced them into introspection they were not ready for. And instead of growing from it, their ego chooses denial. But denial is never sustainable. The truth echoes beneath every rewritten story. They feel that your silence is a reflection of their behavior. They just don't want to admit it. In more fragile cases, they may even try to recruit sympathy from others. They might hint that you changed, that you're acting strange, that you're being distant for no reason. They frame the situation in a way that protects their image, because the ego cares more about appearing right than being right. They want to look like the victim, not the cause. Stoicism teaches that the truth does not need defending, but the ego defends itself constantly. When someone feels the need to alter the narrative, it reveals how deeply your silence affected them. Instead of reflecting inward, they create stories outward. Instead of accepting responsibility, they rewrite reality. Instead of acknowledging the pain your silence exposes, they hide behind excuses. But deep down, they know the truth. Your silence wasn't random. Your silence wasn't emotional. Your silence wasn't petty. Your silence was the consequence of behavior they refused to face. And the more they rewrite the story, the more their ego reveals its fragility. People with strong character do not need narratives. They simply accept, grow, and evolve. People with weak egos cling to stories because they cannot handle the mirror your silence placed in front of them. Your silence did not just affect them. It confronted them. And that confrontation is something their ego is trying desperately to escape. 7. They begin to respect you deeply. Even if they will never admit it, the final sign that your silence is breaking someone's ego is subtle, profound, and often invisible at first glance. Respect. This respect does not come immediately. It does not appear in words. It emerges quietly. Sometimes internally, sometimes in the way they behave around you. When someone's ego has been threatened by your disciplined calm, by your refusal to react, by your unwavering composure, they begin to recognize, consciously or unconsciously, that you possess a strength they cannot shake. They may never say it, they may never acknowledge it, but their behavior begins to reflect it. Respect arises not from fear, not from manipulation, and not from words. It arises from observation. They see that you do not bend, you do not fight, and you do not react for validation. They see that you maintain your composure even when provoked, that you remain consistent when they are chaotic, and that your presence does not require approval. This realization is both humbling and unsettling. Humbling because it confronts them with the reality of their own emotional volatility, and unsettling because it forces them to recalibrate their sense of control. At first, this respect may be invisible to others and even to you. It manifests as subtle behavioral shifts. They may approach you more cautiously, speak with measured tones, or hesitate before attempting manipulations. They may become mindful of how they present themselves in front of you, seeking not to disrupt your calm because they've come to understand, consciously or not, that it is futile. This is the ego's reluctant acknowledgement of your mastery over self, a domain where no external force can intrude. Sometimes, this respect is internal rather than external. They reflect on your behavior in private, thinking, how do they remain so composed? Or, why don't they react like everyone else? This reflection alone marks a turning point. It is a sign that your silence has not only broken their need to control you but also sparked introspection. They may attempt to imitate aspects of your discipline, consciously or unconsciously, because they recognize the power in self-control and emotional independence. The ego may resist acknowledging it, but the mind cannot ignore truth indefinitely. Stoicism teaches that influence is strongest when it is subtle, non-verbal, and non-coercive. When your silence dismantles someone's ego, it does so without force or argument. The ego struggles, fractures, and eventually stabilizes in a new state, respect. And the most remarkable aspect of this respect is that it emerges without confrontation, without drama, and without dependency on their approval. It is a pure acknowledgement of strength, of discipline, and of self-mastery. In many cases, they may never tell you directly. They may never apologize, admit they were wrong, or even show gratitude. But you can often feel it in how they interact with you afterward. The careful words, their softened tone, their measured actions. Even if unspoken, even if concealed, respect has taken root. And this is the silent victory of a Stoic. The ego that once sought to dominate is transformed into recognition of your unwavering strength. Your silence has done what words could not. Your composure has taught what anger cannot. Your presence has revealed what absence could not, and in that unspoken acknowledgement, you achieve the ultimate Stoic triumph, influence through mastery of self rather than control over others. Conclusion: silence is far more than the absence of words. It is a mirror that reflects the truth, a shield that protects your peace, and a weapon that exposes the fragility of inflated egos. When you remain calm, composed, and unmoved by provocation, you are not just withdrawing energy, you are teaching a lesson that words could never convey. Every subtle sign, every defensive reaction, every attempt to compete or manipulate reveals that your silence is breaking their ego in ways they cannot admit. Remember, you do not need to fight, argue, or prove yourself. True strength lies in self-mastery, emotional discipline, and the ability to remain unshaken while others scramble for validation. The ego that once sought to dominate is replaced by respect, quiet, unspoken, and undeniable. If you found value in this video and want to master yourself, strengthen your mind, and navigate life with Stoic wisdom, make sure you subscribe to my channel. More videos like this will teach you how to protect your peace, understand human behavior, and become truly unshakable. Stay disciplined, stay silent, and let your strength speak for itself.